If you're frequently experiencing imbalanced emotional states that's detracting from your overall enjoyment of life, there's a lot of natural solutions that you can partake in to help bring balance to this area. Hello Kindred Longevity Lifestyle Designers, this is Zach here, secretsoflongevity.com. Just got a question from a viewer who's specifically looking at a TCM approach, traditional Chinese medicine type of approach, to a solution of imbalanced emotional problems that are occurring, or states. Specifically talking about anxiety and obsessive thoughts. And in the Chinese system, they associate that with the spleen in general. And there's other possibilities of factors that could be going on that would affect this. So if we're going to remain in that sort of paradigm of Chinese medicine while I discuss this, that's going to be the easiest for this person to interpret, and that's a good way of understanding things to sort of categorize possible causes and even treatments for whatever it is you're experiencing. In this case, it would be emotional distress. So the spleen area of the body, which would include the spleen, stomach, and even pancreas, imbalances of those organs is associated with certain negative emotions. And the big one being anxiety, fear is another one that's associated in that area. And because this area of the body is also very much connected with digestion, optimal digestion, there's a lot of digestive herbs that can really improve the emotion that would then correspond with that area. There's of course many different ways one can become imbalanced in that area. Health is not a one-shot magic bullet for every symptom and illness that's out there. So sometimes it would take a bit of fiddling around with different approaches to see what really starts to shift it for you. And that's why this video is going to look at a few different approaches. We're going to first talk about some different herbal strategies, and then we'll get into some more lifestyle stuff. So first of all, specifically talking about the spleen itself, if we want to strengthen it and bring balance to the spleen area itself, you're going to want to look at spleen tonic herbs, or qi tonics largely. This is going to include white atractylodes, poria, and actually those two herbs have often been used in combination because poria is more of a yin tonic and white atractylodes is a little bit more yang, and together they really harmonize all the energies of the spleen and stomach and digestion in general. Poria cocos is a mushroom that is also known as fuling in the Chinese language, and they're found in sort of rolled up tubes. You can kind of see this, it's just a little tube that's in like a little cigarette type shape or cigar shape, and it's got very little flavor. You can even eat it straight. Just it has no flavor whatsoever. It was often eaten like that, almost like a snack at tables, and it really helps to dry out the spleen and the stomach, not literally in terms of there being a dampness. Obviously all the organs in your body are wet because they're inside of you and your insides are damp, but it's an energetic quality. But when they get damp, it gets sluggish, specifically talking about the spleen, and this leads to problems of poor digestion. And this is a symptomatic thing with raw foodists and also vegetarian/vegans, because they don't have enough warming foods, which is generally the more animal type foods, and a lot of plant foods are also a lot more dampening in general. There's ways to work with that, of course, and the addition of something like that can be very beneficial for someone that's wanting to remain in that sort of vegetarian, vegan, or even raw foodist approach to diet. Some other spleen tonics you can use, of course, are astragalus. A lot of people are familiar with that one. And it looks like a tongue depressor in its whole sliced root state. It's got a mild sweet flavor, which is really nice, and it's also a yang qi tonic, kind of very similar in properties to white atractylodes, but it's got a little bit more of an immune boosting factor, which is excellent during the winter. I definitely place it among the top 10 Chinese tonic herbs of all, or even maybe top 10 tonic herbs of the world. And you can find extracts and even some of the whole herbs for all the herbs that I'm talking about in this section in the drop-down menu below. And you can get astragalus extract, meaning you can just use it straight, put it into smoothies or other things. without having to decoct it, or you can get the astragalus whole herb, or the powdered herb, in terms of it being just the whole herb powdered, which you then have to extract in a tea form or a tincture. Doesn't take long, boiling maybe 20 minutes, and you've got a nice tea. Obviously it's good to mix in some other herbs sometimes, but it is one of the herbs that you can use on its own. And it's got a very nice sweet flavor to it. An herb that is a little bit more stimulating, which might be necessary, but is definitely a chi tonic and has that warming quality and might help dry out the spleen a bit, is ginseng. We're talking about Chinese and Korean ginseng more so than the American ginseng. And those two herbs are great for overall health. They're whole body tonics, but they do definitely have their most concentrated action in that sort of chi area, which would be sort of the digestive fire, solar plexus type energy area of the body. For those who have a constitution that needs a bit more of a calming action, ginseng might be too stimulating. Something like gynostemma would be a great addition to a regimen. This can be used on its own as well. Gynostemma, it's one of the most underrated Chinese herbs. It's got hundreds of different properties to it that are similar things that goes on with ginseng, but it's triple or more in its concentration of these certain chemicals, which are different saponins and other things that are very much about adapting your body to different stresses. So when we take in miracle grass, which is also the gynostemma, it's going to be working on a number of different things throughout the body, and because it's got that name gynostemma, it's got that gyno in there, which kind of tells you that it's a female herb. Gyno meaning female, gynecology, etc. That doesn't mean that men can't take it, but that is definitely an herb that is very well tailored to women that want to bring sort of this balance to that area of their body. So those few herbs I just talked about would fall under the category of spleen tonics. Another approach to balancing anxiety and emotional distress is to take the SHEN tonic herb approach. So working with SHEN tonics, which are generally thought to be the most spiritually calming, increasing self-awareness and overall qualities that could be likened to enlightenment and anything to do with spirituality. These herbs bring balance to that area. So if you were to think of the three treasures as Jing, which is lower abdomen, Qi, which is upper abdomen getting into the chest area, and then Shen being more around the head and shoulders in terms of energy quality and density. Shen tonics are much more higher vibrational and have that quality of working on those upper levels. And if your anxiety is located with this type of energy, needing that sort of calming action, then Shen tonics would be the best approach. So number one is reishi. Wild reishi even more so than cultivated reishi, but both types are wonderful for bringing balance to that, your overall emotional state. It increases your radiance is another way of putting it. And one of my oldest videos I've done on my channel, which has a lot of views, is on reishi, and you can check out that video here and sort of get a blast from the past of me discussing the benefits of reishi. And I think it's still very much applicable today. Just take note that I spoke with a much different intonation. I was perhaps a little bit slower in getting to the point in some of my past videos. Another fantastic Shen tonic is going to be schizandra berries. And this again is also a whole body tonic, but does have a very strong Shen effect, calming, balancing to your emotions, and is also another very good female tonic that has a beautifying effect of bringing clarity and smoothness to the skin, which might be of interest to some people. Then another Shen tonic, which is again another beauty tonic. There's an interesting correlation between Shen tonics and beauty and clarity and suppleness of the skin. It's going to be pearl. So pearl powder is basically just the ground up pearls, which is a source of calcium, which has a calming effect on the whole body. And then a number of other minerals, a very mineral dense herb or food that can be easily added to elixirs, smoothies, and other types of food and drinks. One of the best things for anxiety and calming the nerves is holy basil. It's an Ayurvedic herb, so it's a bit outside of the Chinese herbal pharmacopoeia and categorization, but it definitely fits in that Shen tonic category because holy basil was a very spiritual plant and was kept in the home for its spiritually cultivating properties of just having it around you. But when a tea is made of the herb, it's been clinically shown to lower cortisol and have a bunch of other mood altering and balancing effects, which is a great thing to have in a daily tea. A great combination, in my opinion, is just combining holy basil with gynostemma, and you can even throw in some nettle leaf. It's like 3 tonic herbs that have the same cooking time, that are from 3 different parts of the world, that all have tonic properties, and it's kind of like the equivalent to making a green tea, but has a more broad-ranging and more beneficial effect over the long term. And one other herb we're going to talk about in the Shen tonic category is asparagus root. This is a Ginseng tonic, but it's also a Shen tonic. Very good for women. Again, this is another one of those female balancing herbs. And by the way, this question was originally asked by a woman, so that's why I keep referencing that. A great combination would be the asparagus root with the gynostemma and then the schizandra. That's going to have a very 3-tiered approach of working on the qi, the shen, and the jing all at once, but having a very specific effect on balancing emotions and bringing overall harmony to your mental well-being. So the third category of herbs we're going to talk about is liver cleansing herbs. The reason for that is because in the what's known as the destructive cycle of the Chinese 5-element theory, this is getting a bit complicated, but you have the 5 elements, one of which is the earth element, and that's associated with the spleen organ system. So we're familiar with the spleen organ system. But there's also fire, metal, water, and wood as the other Chinese elements in terms of the different organ systems and the things associated with them, and emotions and other things. So the destructive cycle is when an organ gets out of balance, whether it gets too elevated in terms of its properties, it starts to detract from the opposite element. So I can't remember the exact placement of these different elements, but what I can say is that the way they think of it is metal detracts from wood, almost like an axe would chop down a tree. Wood detracts from earth, almost like the way a tree parts the ground to plant itself and root itself up. Earth detracts from water because it soaks up water, and water detracts from fire because it puts out fire, and fire detracts from metal because it melts metal, and that completes the cycle. So by that theory and that sort of Chinese medicine logic, we can understand that wood splits the earth and can cause harm to the spleen energy by having an overactive liver. So by calming, detoxifying, and working with the liver, we can bring the spleen into balance indirectly. And that's a very common way that Chinese doctors actually work with you, whether it's through diet, acupuncture, or herbalism, is they always look at what's the overall balance of all these different things. If there's something that's really functioning at too high a level, they'll bring that down in order to bring another thing that might be deficient back up. So to calm and detoxify the liver and bring balance to it, some liver detoxifying herbs is going to be a short-term strategy. These are not tonic herbs. You don't want to do these for a long period of time. I'd recommend doing 2 weeks of these herbs, and you can actually check out an old video of mine here, which is the liver cleansing ice cream that I did. Again, it's a very old vid and has some fun things going on in it, and it's going to talk about these 4 herbs that I'm going to briefly mention here. So you have dandelion root, whether it's roasted or not, doesn't matter. It's going to have a very detoxifying effect on the liver. You have yellow dock, and you have burdock root. So those 3 herbs in combination help bring out excess bile, help detoxify the liver, and on their own they're great in that combination of the 3. But a 4th one you can add in to help bring in a protective effect on the liver. So this one's not so much detoxifying, it's like after you've detoxified, or even taking it with the detoxification, it prevents the toxins that you're releasing from the liver from damaging your body and your liver itself. So it's known as the best liver protective herb that's out there, which is milk thistle. And again, those 4 herbs can be found in this video if you want to sort of see a way to use these herbs in an active way in your diet. You can always just make a tea with those 3, and it's very easy to use, but with the milk thistle it's a little more complicated because it's fat soluble, so you can't make a tea out of it. It has to be almost like blended into a fat, almost like a nut milk. So it actually doesn't need a proper extraction method in terms of simmering it, but when you blend it with a warm tea that you made from these 3 herbs with a fat, like nuts or seeds they've soaked and sprouted, you're going to get the constituents from the milk thistle extracted into the tea from the fats. And actually going back to the Shen tonic category, schizandra berries are one of the most powerful liver detoxifying herbs out there because it both detoxifies the liver as well as ensures that those toxins are carried safely out of the body. So this is known as a stage 1 and stage 2 liver detoxifying herb. There's very few that are like this. Most herbs are either stage 1 detoxifying or stage 2 detoxifying. So you can even throw that one into the herbal combination for the liver cleanse if you wanted to use it in a medicinal way like that, as opposed to a tonic approach, which would be the long-term lower dosage usage. So you'd up the schizandra berry dose with those 3 herbs. A general dose of schizandra berry for tonic purposes is a teaspoon per day. I've seen people doing very high doses of it, which is fine. I wouldn't do that on long term just because that's not really following the proper dosage recommendations of Chinese herbalism. And by the way, milk thistle, you're going to only be needing to do 1 teaspoon a day as well, but most herbs in general, the dosage is 1 tablespoon a day in tea. That's a very general, broad-ranging dosage, but there are certain herbs that you need less of. There's some herbs you might need a bit more of. And generally, if you have any good herbal reference manuals, they'll describe those differences. So check out the links below for many of those herbs. Not all the herbs are going to be down below, so if you've heard me talk about something that's not down there, just check it out online and find a source for it. But yeah, purchasing through those links helps me out and helps keep me putting out these well-researched educational videos for you guys. So getting on to more lifestyle things for coping with and dealing with and balancing anxiety and other emotional imbalances in ourselves. The biggest thing is going to be getting enough sleep. If you're not getting enough sleep, you're going to be cranky and more likely to be caught up in these sort of cyclical thinking, and of course the anxiety that is associated with that. So there's sleep, there's also eating properly. If you're not getting enough calories, personally I've found I get anxious if I'm not eating enough. Obviously a lot of people get that. And for me, I do very poorly on fasts, where I'm doing just juice or just water. I can barely last a day doing that just from my unique metabolism type. So if you are someone that has problem fasting, you might be a slow oxidizer, which means you'd be the type of person that runs better on a higher fat, higher protein diet. So you should also look at your overall balance of macronutrients and really look at what's working for you. Do you work and feel better on higher fat, higher protein, or do you function well on higher carbohydrates, whether it's fruits or starches or any combination of things, or are you somewhere in the middle? Do you need a bit of both? Many people who have just a complete balance of things in their life, herbs might help them, but if they just want to approach it from a practical lifestyle tool approach, you can start looking at meditation, self-healing type practices. So I recommend looking up EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique. There's free instructions online in many locations that will give you a good tool to work with emotional imbalances and things that are really nagging at you, especially if you've just come out of a relationship, if you're dealing with someone in your life that's giving you a hard time in some way. This is a very good tool for dealing with the anger, the sadness, the depression, the anxiety, or fear, or whatever's going on associated with that. You can clear that out of your system, out of your arc field, and really get harmonized and balanced again so that you're not getting your energy sucked into that cyclical, emotionally draining pattern. For me personally, I find that meditation is so key. You can check out this video of mine where I teach a very simple sort of Qigong meditation, which is the microcosmic orbit, and I find that is very good at clearing stuck emotions, especially in that main circuit, the governing and conception vessels, which are 2 of the main acupuncture points in the body. And by tracing your awareness through that cycle, that cyclical circular pattern through the body, it really undoes a lot of tension that you'd be holding without really knowing it along those chakra energy points. Now, one other thing I want to talk about is the difference between men and women, and these are very broad generalizations. It's definitely not a hard and fast rule. It's largely a social construct, but it is something that most people have to deal with depending on their gender identity. So in general, women, their vice or their egotistical trap in this society is going to be the need for security in their life. And for men, it's the need for status. So in relationships, that's largely what, when they fall apart and don't work, and we're talking about intimate relationships, when they don't work, that's probably due to something in that doesn't quite work out. So it could be money issues, which causes women to not feel secure and would cause men not to feel like they have a high enough status in society. So the biggest liberator for your emotions and your personal feeling of well-being, so that you're not anxious and feeling this high level of anxiety, is to really come to grips with these social constructs. So it's not a bad thing to look for security in your life and to look for status and cultivate that in your career and your family life and whatever. But it's to not be attached to it, to not have that as a requirement for you to be happy and to be content and to be balanced in yourself. So as a man, you want to be looking at divorcing yourself from your career path emotionally. Not to say you can't have emotion in your career path, but not have it be your sole thing that gives you a feeling of self-worth in the world. You just need to be yourself to have self-worth in the world. There's no need to have this attachment to being a celebrity or being the top of your company or being this type of person in society. Again, you can be those things, but just don't have that as the thing that holds you up. So you think of the Great Depression, people lost all their money and they were committing suicide, jumping out of windows. If you don't have the attachment to that status, you're not going to kill yourself when you lose that status, if you happen to lose it. Same goes for women. If you're attached to that need for security, you're going to end up going into relationships where you're looking for that security, but you might be ignoring other factors at play that could be undermining your integrity and your best interests. So someone might be really rich, but they might be horrible to you. Someone might seem like a very strong, powerful male in your life, if we're talking about a woman wanting the security of someone larger than them, but maybe they're too aggressive with you, maybe they're not respectful of women, other things. These are just general ideas of what could happen. So for women, the best thing for their relationship success and the diminishing of feelings of anxiety and things is to really look at letting go of a need for security, because more than ever in our world today, women have the ability to be self-sufficient, so they do not need someone else to supply them with their security in the world. And more than ever, men can be successful without having status in society. So both men and women today have this unique opportunity of overcoming these long-held societal constructs, and that can be a big factor in reducing anxiety, bringing you a greater sense of emotional fulfillment, and overall giving you a much better chance at living a long, healthy life. So with that, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like and favorite the video, subscribe if you haven't done that before, and with that, take care and embrace life without limits. Chinese medicine is a mushroom, and this is